Hello, my name's Sam Kimmins. I'm the head of RE100 with the Climate Group, and I'm delighted to be here presenting at the H.eco Forum. I'd like to thank the Career Herald for inviting the Climate Group to be here to present RE100. So I'm going to cover three areas today. First of all, what is RE100? Secondly, I'll look at the opportunities and risks around renewable electricity in the Asia-Pacific region. And I'll talk more specifically about South Korea and the progress that is being made by both government and corporates in the renewable energy transition. So first of all, what is RE100? RE100 is a campaign that brings together the world's leading companies committed to 100% renewable electricity. RE100 is run by the Climate Group in partnership with CDP. To date, 311 companies have committed to RE100, made that commitment to use 100% renewable electricity across their global operations. Together, their electricity demand is around 2/3 that of Korea's entire annual electricity consumption. If we were a country, RE100 would be the 13th largest country in the world by electricity demand at over 300 terawatt hours per year. That's a huge demand for renewable electricity. It's important to stress that this isn't just an empty commitment. These companies are doing what they promised to do. Every year, we collect data from our members. We ask them to report on their progress. And so far, RE100 members on average have achieved 43% renewable electricity. Some organisations have gone a lot further than that, with 60 having reached 90% or above renewable. And this is having real world impacts. Around 10% of new renewable electricity capacity that was installed last year was done so through corporate power purchase agreements. And that figure is set to rise significantly over the coming years. So corporates are playing an enormously important role in not just committing to using renewable electricity, but actually enabling the installation of new capacity. Back in 2020, Bloomberg New Energy Finance calculated the investment potential from RE100 companies. And they calculated that in order to get where they were in 2019 to where they wanted to be by 2030, they would need to invest $98 billion in renewable electricity. That's a significant investment. And I'll come back to that later in this talk. Why are companies doing this? Well, when RE100 started, it was very much about being the right thing to do for carbon management and really driving forward renewables, because our founders like Kimmins and Swiss Re and the other early joiners felt this is the right thing to do. We need to send a signal that there is demand for renewable electricity. But these are also business savvy businesses. These are smart businesses. They forward-thinking companies that knew that there was business advantage in committing to 100% renewable electricity. And that is really playing out now. Renewable electricity has been declared by the IEA as the cheapest form of electricity in history. That was referring to solar power in their recent World Energy Outlook. The cost of solar power has dropped by 85% in the last 10 years, according to IRENA. And the cost of onshore wind has dropped by 49% in the same period. So going 100% renewable is not just the right thing for the planet, it's also the right thing for your business. So moving across to the Asia-Pacific region, what are the implications and opportunities for Asia-Pacific businesses and governments in this corporate sourcing movement? Well, RE100 was initially a European and US dominated movement, with the companies mainly coming from Northern Europe and the US. But it's really become a global movement, and nearly half of new RE100 members, 43% in 2020, were from the Asia-Pacific region. Japan is very much in the lead there, boasting 54 RE100 members out of our 311 based in Japan. It's our second largest single country membership after the USA. So why this growth? Well, not only are Asia-Pacific based companies recognizing the economic advantage of using renewable electricity based on its cost in a fair market, there's another driver. Large corporates such as Apple, Google, and others are increasingly asking their supply chains to use renewable electricity. 100 Apple suppliers have now committed to using 100% renewables to supply Apple goods. Google's ambition is for their suppliers in every region to be powered using renewable sources. BT has a similar commitment, and in all, when we surveyed our members in 2020, 20 of them had told us that they had a current active policy to ask their suppliers to use renewable electricity. 14 told us that they were planning to introduce such a policy. And we see this trend expanding dramatically. The growth of demand on supply chains to use renewables will grow enormously in the coming months and years. Companies and policymakers and supply chain economies throughout the Asia-Pacific region are identifying this as an opportunity, but also a risk for their industrial competitiveness. For example, in 2019, President Tsai Ing-wen of the Taiwanese authorities stated in her industrial policy keynote address that the ability to achieve RE100 is a critical consideration for Taiwan's industrial policy. On the flip side, RE100 members have noted that APAC countries, including Korea, top their list of difficult countries, the most difficult countries in which Asia-Pacific countries top the list of the most difficult markets in which to source renewable electricity. And this is really important because those companies are directing that $98 billion in investment in the first instance at economies and markets where it's easy to buy renewable electricity. Northern Europe, US, Australia, which means that countries with difficult markets will miss out on that investment. And of course, it's becoming increasingly important for supply chains for securing contracts from these major corporates who are insisting on the use of renewable electricity in their supply chains. So why is it so difficult to get renewables in some of these markets? Japan, Korea, Indonesia. Well, it's not because of lack of sunlight, lack of wind, or lack of land. There's not physical characteristics. It's also not due to lack of equipment. I mean, Korea produces some of the best solar panels, some of the best batteries, best renewable energy equipment in the world, which is then exported internationally and is producing very low cost electricity in the US, across the US and Europe, across the world. No, so it's not the physical characteristics of the countries that is the issue. It's market policy. It's markets that enable renewables to compete on a level playing field with fossil fuels. And the challenge is that many economies, many markets are still locked in the old system where they're giving competitive advantage to the old, dirty fossil fuel systems that have been in operation for decades. So what needs to change? Well, RE100 has worked with our members to identify 6 policy recommendations. And these have been agreed by the RE100 membership and key organisations, including IRENA, looking at what are the characteristics of policy that enable companies to invest their money in a market to buy renewable electricity. I won't go through the full list of policy recommendations today. Just to touch on 2 of these that I'll talk about in relation to Korea. First of all, the ability for corporate buyers of all sizes to directly trade with renewable energy suppliers to buy renewable electricity, commonly known as a power purchase agreement, or PPA. It enables a company to go, I would like to buy the electricity output of that wind farm, and I'd like to do a direct trade, enabling renewable electricity to compete directly with coal, gas, and other forms of electricity production. The second important characteristic is a low-cost form of tracking for renewable electricity, commonly known as a renewable electricity certificate or renewable energy certificate, that allows a company to demonstrate that they have bought a certain number of megawatts of renewable electricity and they have used an equal amount of electricity to that they have purchased, and to verify that what they have bought is actually from a renewable source. Now, there's lots of technical stuff behind that. I'm not going to go into the technicalities of how renewable energy certificates work or PPAs work, but just they are the 2 most important characteristics in policy. And I'm pleased to say that change is happening rapidly. Governments around the world are waking up to this opportunity presented by the corporate renewable electricity movement. For example, in Taiwan, new legislation was introduced in 2019, and in 2020, Google engaged in the first power purchase agreement in Taiwan for a modest-sized solar plant, really trailblazing that. And then just a few months later, TSMC, one of the world's largest companies, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, due to this new legislation, felt they were able to join RE100, and they, at the same time, they signed a contract with Ørsted to buy the electricity from what will be the world's largest offshore wind farm, and this will be the largest PPA signed in history for a huge wind farm off the coast of Taiwan at 6 gigawatts. So very exciting time, and huge progress made by Taiwan in a very short time. And Taiwan is now seen as a renewable energy leader. It's being watched by all the investors to go, okay, this is the place to watch in the Pacific region. So what are the implications of this for Korea? Moving on to South Korea, we talked about the broader region. Well, when I first visited Korea in 2018, there's huge interest from our members, from the RE100 members, many of whom have operations in South Korea, and many of whom have very significant supply chains based in South Korea. So we visited to see what the situation was, and working with our colleagues in KSNRE and COSIF, who are our local partners in the region. Korea has been difficult. I'll start again. Korea has been identified by our members as a difficult market. It's almost impossible to buy renewable electricity unless you're self-generating from your rooftop. And it's impossible to do deals at scale. And so our members are concerned that, if we can't buy renewable electricity, we can't invest in renewable energy infrastructure. How do we overcome this hurdle? It's also a major risk for the competitive position of Korea as one of the world's foremost suppliers of high-tech products to those key suppliers like Apple, Google, etc. Now, not speaking for any one particular company, but we have heard from our members they are making real business decisions based on where they can buy renewable electricity. So big challenges in Korea. It's the fourth largest importer of coal, very much a coal-dominated electricity supply chain. How, since 2018, have things changed? Well, we really wanted a hero company to step up and really show the government, give the government confidence that there is corporate demand for renewable electricity, given the confidence to take ambitious action towards the energy transition and the renewable future. And I'm delighted to say that in December 2020, 6 members of the SK Group joined us in RE100, SK Corporation, SK Materials, SK Siltron, SK Hynix, SK Telecom, SK Chemicals underneath SK Holdings. So absolutely fantastic that this company, despite the difficulties of buying renewables in Korea, these companies have stepped up to the challenge. And they've since been joined by K-Water, LG Energy Solutions, and Amor Pacific, 3 more ambitious leaders who are really pioneering the way for Korean business and leading the energy transition in Korea. This sends a clear signal to the government and to the energy industry in Korea that business is on board for the clean energy transition. I can't say enough how important it is that these companies stepped up. So great to see that leadership. There's been action more broadly, and President Moon Jae-in has been very ambitious in pronouncements for Korea to be zero carbon, with an announcement in October 2020, an announcement to phase out international coal investment, an intangible action at home, tangible domestic action announcing the launch of a wind farm, an 8.2 gigawatt wind farm off the coast of Korea that will be significantly larger than the Taiwanese wind farm that I mentioned earlier. So things are moving ahead incredibly quickly. 2020 also saw the launch of RE100 policies as part of the Korean New Green Deal and measures to enable companies to achieve RE100 was a manifesto promise of the governing party. Following on this promise, the Korean government has introduced a RE100 program to support local voluntary purchasing for SMEs in the public sector in parallel to RE100. They're developing the K-REGO renewable electricity certificate to enable tracking of renewables between buyers and sellers. And importantly, an amended bill has gone through the National Assembly Standing Committee on February the 23rd to enable direct PPAs. This is the direct trade of electricity from renewable electricity suppliers to renewable electricity buyers. So some great progress in Korea, from a point where 3 years ago people were telling us that no Korean company will step up to this, and it's really difficult, it's really challenging. Incredible progress, and I see there is potential for Korea to be a regional renewable electricity leader. The pace of change is fantastic, but the climate clock is ticking. And is the pace of change fast enough? Well, it is early days. I don't want to be too critical. I really want to celebrate the progress that has been made. but the studies show that in order to achieve the 2050, the 2040 carbon neutral goal, the investment in renewable electricity infrastructure will need to increase tenfold in very short order. I also want to celebrate the introduction of RE100 compatible energy policies, but also the devil is in the detail. It's important that the details are right. And while there's been great progress in allowing PPAs, it is important that the charging costs by KEPCO and KPX, such as power grid usage fees, are not too high. This will simply kill the market. If it's not a level playing field with coal, gas, and nuclear and other energy sources, renewable electricity will not be able to compete. And believe me, when renewables can compete on a level playing field, there are cost savings for all. Remember, the IEA stated, solar electricity is the lowest cost form of electricity in history. It's important to stress also that this is a real business issue. This is a real competitiveness issue for Korea. As renewables are currently not cheaply available in the way they are in many competing economies, and until fair power purchase agreement rules are established, it will still be impossible to procure large volumes of cheap, clean power in South Korea. And while this is still impossible, those economies of scale won't be possible. That influx of corporate investment won't be happening. But it'll also place South Korean business at a competitive disadvantage and unable to benefit from investment and job creation associated with the corporate renewable electricity movement. So the opportunities are huge. Progress is being made. I don't want to understate the progress that is being made, but the clock is ticking and more action is needed. We look forward to working with our partners, KSNRE and KOSIF, to support Korean business and the Korean government in accelerating their energy transition to a clean, low-cost, renewable future. I'm going to give the last word to Alok Sharma, the COP26 president, who has called on more companies to step up and join RE100, making that 100% commitment. So I look forward to welcoming more Korean companies to RE100 and joining this important and positive movement for change. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.